Session of the San Gabriel City Council to order. First, we have the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilmember John Harrington.
Thank you, Mayor. Please rise, place your right hand over your heart, and repeat with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Harrington. Roll call, please.
Mayor Pooh.
Here.
Councilmember Costanzo.
Here.
Councilmember Harrington.
Here.
Councilmember Liao.
Here.
And Vice Mayor Menchaca is absent. Do we have a motion to excuse?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay, motion second, no objection. That the absence is excused. Approval of agenda order. There will be a change to the consent calendar that our city manager will explain there. And also, we unfortunately need to pull item 6A, the State of Neighborhood Improvement Services update, because unfortunately our building officer, Joe Chen, is out sick. So we hope he feels better, and we will reschedule that item for a future date. So with that, is there an approval or motion for approval?
Motion was amended.
And a second? All right, we're seeing no objection. It's so ordered. Public comment, please.
This is the time set aside for members of the public to address the City Council on items of interest that are not on the agenda but are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the San Gabriel City Council. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the City Council cannot answer any questions or take any action until such time as the matter may appear as an item on a future agenda. In an effort to provide everyone with an opportunity to speak tonight, please be aware that all public comments will be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes. You will receive a 30-second warning as you approach the end of your time. As a reminder, please be respectful of all speakers regardless of the position they take on any items. If you wish to address the City Council, we request that you please complete a speaker's request card and hand it to the clerk. When speaking, please state your name for the record.
Thank you, Sharon. We have one speaker's request card from Carissa. Forgive me if I mispronounce. Lisney. Okay. Welcome.
My name is Carissa Lisney, and I live on Pasquale, right behind Coolidge School. My parents moved to San Gabriel when I was 1. My husband was born and raised here, and we're raising our children here. So we left San Gabriel, and we have a history here. I'm here because of a prevalent and increasingly disturbing coyote problem that we have. There's a coyote encounters website that I encourage people to report on, where residents can report their coyote encounters. In the past 30 days, residents have reported about 30 sightings, and that's sort of like in this general area. Just the other day, there was talk on the Nextdoor app about a coyote having babies underneath a residence's home, the home of an elderly woman. There was baby coyotes, and they appeared to be, well, they said bloody, so I guess injured or something. But anyways, there's a problem. And we were told by the coyote expert that you guys had here, I attended that meeting last year, and we were told to make the coyotes feel unwelcome by hazing them. I have hazed coyotes many times, and the coyotes do not care at all. I believe that the coyotes are getting used to the hazing. It doesn't seem like anything bothers them. The coyote expert that you invited here told us to keep our pets indoors, dusk to dawn. However, I myself have seen coyotes in my neighborhood at all different times at hours of the day, mostly like in the afternoon. Also, I'd often, on my way to Gabrielino around pickup time, so around 3-ish, I will lots of times see a coyote north of Gab. There's a coyote myths website that I have had people read from Nextdoor, and I believe that your coyote expert misinformed this community about coyotes. Coyotes do not self-regulate. They do not maintain their own numbers. In suburban environments, coyotes have plenty of food and no predators. The fact that we are taking away their habitat and that they were here first is also a myth historically. This is true about a lot of animals, but not about coyotes. California, about 80% of the population lives in about 7% of the land, so the coyotes have plenty of other places to go. They don't have to be here eating our pets and making us feel unsafe. In the last 20 years, coyotes have actually encroached upon our habitat at an unprecedented rate. And metropolis areas have created a safe habitat for them. And coyotes have actually moved into our neighborhood. So the myth that killing them or relocating them that causes them to increase in number is also a risk. Anyways, what I'm trying to say is there's a terrible problem. I see them all the time. I don't walk my own dog. I don't let my kids walk the dog because if they come after my dog, they're going to hurt my kids. We're all scared. And I know that Ms. Costanza has received a couple of emails about the coyotes, and she's waiting to hear from back to you. I know that you've exchanged a couple of emails. Anyways, that's all I want to say. There's a problem, and I feel like now that the city is fully aware of it, and we've been talking about it for a year now, I'm afraid that the city is going to possibly be legally responsible for anything that might happen to a human because we all know about it now. So we don't want that.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any other something? All right. I guess our city manager would like to make a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just for Ms. Lisney's information and anybody who watches this, the San Gabriel Valley COG has started a regional program. And so in order to consider whether the city involves itself in that program, we're having an agenda item next council meeting, September 17th, to discuss this very matter. So if you would like to hear more information and have a chance for the council to actually respond, next meeting would be your chance.
Can you repeat so that was on the agenda item?
Sure. It's September 17th. The San Gabriel Valley Council of Governments, what we call the COG, they have a regional program that they are asking cities to consider joining to look at this on a regional basis.
Okay. Thank you. Were there any other members of the public who would like to address the San Gabriel City Council? Okay. Seeing none, I will close public comment. Next item, consent calendar, and Mark has a comment on this as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would request that the council pull item D and just not consider that tonight. That was the item to appoint Paula Chamberlain as our interim finance director for a longer period of time. Before, prior to last week, and I'd sent you all an email telling you that our finance director that we had lined up to come in and be a permanent finance director has backed out of that offer. And so we were in the need to appoint an interim director, but at the same time, a permanent director. At the same time, I wanted to keep Paula Chamberlain on staff for a few months in order to handle a couple of special projects. And so we had already put on the agenda item E, which is the creation of a special position, the management specialist position. That position will be used throughout the city at times where we need to bring specialists on board and we don't have a position for them or a classification for them. So we were going to appoint Paula as the management specialist for that finite period of time. As it turns out, we do need to appoint an interim finance director, and so we quickly put item D on the agenda, and then had a conversation subsequently with PERS, who is our retirement agency, as you all know. PERS has indicated that we cannot appoint her for a second term because of their arcane PERS rules. We disagree with that, but in the end, we don't want to we'll put the city or Paula at any jeopardy. So long story short, we will still be appointing Paula, with council's permission, still be appointing Paula as the management specialist. She will have all the duties of our interim finance director and will be acting in that capacity until we are able to attract a permanent finance director, but we will not be appointing her as interim finance director. So in summary, please don't do item D, but adopt item E instead.
Any questions about that? No? All right. Does any member of the council wish to pull any item? Was there a motion to approve them?
I'll move to approve all the items except item D.
Okay, motion and second. Let's go to the board. And
Technical issues here. You might want to check this out.
Motion passes by a vote of 4-0.
note to City Clerk, please check Councilmember Harrington's voting lever. For those in the audience, I used to sit in that seat, so I
Voted with enthusiasm.
No, I was sticking it to the next person to sit there by jamming it or something. All right, consent calendar is approved. Next item is a public hearing. Zone text amendment to update the San Gabriel Municipal Code relating to accessory dwelling units. I believe our process is to first have the staff report. Is that correct? All right. Then we will open the public hearing portion after the staff report.
It's not working. Nope.
Please just continue and speak loudly while John figures out the texture.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is Anthony Alvarado, and I'm the Assistant Planner in the Planning Division. This public hearing item before you this evening is for a cleanup zone text amendment for the San Gabriel Municipal Code as it pertains to the development of accessory dwelling units or ADUs. In 2016 to 2017, the state of California amended Government Code Section 65852.2 to facilitate the development of accessory dwelling units. Local municipalities were given the option to either choose not to adopt an ordinance, which would make them subject to the state standards, or adopt its own ADU ordinance in order to tailor the requirements to the existing development patterns found in their own community. On June 19, 2018, City Council approved ZTA 17-002, which adopted ordinance number 644-CS relating to the development of ADUs. Since adoption of the ordinance, there has been a total of 43 ADU applications submitted to the Planning Division, and of those, 21 of them have been approved and allowed to move forward to the building plan check process. Over the past year, staff has received questions and inquiries regarding some of the language in this ordinance. This proposed ZTA tonight would address those questions that staff has encountered most frequently over the past year. As part of the ordinance 644-CS, the city proposed to eliminate the second residential units and senior housing units section in the San Gabriel Municipal Code. The ADU language is more flexible than the San Gabriel's previously mentioned sections. However, there are still references to both of these terms in the code that were overlooked by staff during the adoption of the ordinance 644-CS. The proposed ETA would delete and or modify these outdated references. The second portion of this ETA relates to clarification for current ADU language. The maximum size for ADU, as prescribed in the San Gabriel Municipal Code, is 50% of the primary dwelling unit up to a maximum of 800 square feet. This was done to ensure that the ADU remains accessory or supplemental to the primary dwelling unit. Elements such as permanently covered porches and patios can not only add to a building's footprint, but could also potentially be converted illegally into a habitable space in the future. Based on state law, cities can only require one additional parking space on a lot for an ADU. However, this requirement may be met by either being covered, uncovered, a mechanical automobile parking lift, or as a tandem space on an existing driveway. An ADU garage is not considered required parking and thus should be restricted to the maximum size of 200 square feet according to section 153.031 of the San Gabriel Municipal Code. If the garage is attached to the ADU, it would count towards the maximum ADU square footage size. The following slide provides illustrations to display these scenarios, where we have, in option number 1, we have the 200 square foot garage detached from the 800 square foot maximum ADU. Option number 2, you have a garage attached to the ADU, both of which have to meet the 800 square foot maximum requirement. And option number 3, an ADU porch / patio attached to an ADU, both of which have to meet the 800 square foot maximum allowance. And all three of these options do take into account if the lot would allow for a maximum ADU size of 800 square feet. The final part of the CTA is recordation of a covenant. The San Gabriel Municipal Code currently requires that either the primary dwelling unit or the ADU is owner occupied. However, we do not have a requirement to have a covenant filed in order to ensure this. Based on the city's previous second residential unit language, a covenant was a requirement for those kind of applications. The covenant requirement is not something new for second residential residences. The proposed covenant would be required for all ADU applications and must state the three following. Number 1 is either the primary unit or the ADU shall be owner occupied. Second, the ADU may not be sold separately from the primary dwelling unit. And finally, the unit that is not occupied by the owner may not be rented out for a term of less than 30 days. The latter of these three being maybe the most important because it would prohibit the use of ADUs as hotels or short-term living options such as Airbnb. Also, staff did want to clarify that this covenant is not an affordability covenant. Planning staff has determined that the amendment would be compatible with San Gabriel's general plan based on land use goal 1.3 and community design goal 10.3. Staff has determined that the proposed amendment would be exempt from CEQA's guidelines under section, here we go, thank you. Would be exempt from CEQA guidelines section 15282H. The section exempts the adoption of an ordinance regarding second units in residential zones to implement the provisions of the government code. On August 12, 2019, the Planning Commission recommended approval of the proposed zone text amendment to City Council with a vote of 4-0. The language in this zone text amendment is intended to provide clarification. It would not cause development to occur. The proposed ETA is not anticipated to have an impact on the city's revenue fund. The changes made by this ordinance shall apply to any application that is deemed complete on or after 31 days after the passage. To that end, staff is recommended that the City Council conduct the following actions on the zone text amendment as called out on your staff reports. And in closing, staff would also like to make a request to the City Council to make a friendly amendment to this item. Staff, after discussion, staff would like to embed the following image. If I go back to it right there. The following image into the zoning code, section 153.047, To provide a better understanding of the proposed language, staff believes that illustrations would do a much better job of explaining this technical language. Yes. And if the City Council would like to adopt this, staff can address the changes between the first and second readings of this item. Okay. Thank you, and that concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you, Anthony. I will now open the public hearing portion of this item. Is there any member of the public who would like to speak regarding this zone text amendment for accessory dwelling units? Don't all rush up at once. Okay, hearing none, I will close the public hearing portion. Now is time for council discussion and questions. Are there any members of the council who wish to ask questions? Go ahead, Councilmember Leal.
Thank you, Mayor. So I just have a quick question regarding the option 2 and 3. If you look at the pictures, option 2 has ADU 800 square feet maximum, and then plus 200 square feet of the garage, right? So that's for 2. And then the option 3 is 800 altogether maximum, including the porch and patio. So my question is, why option 3 is 200 square feet less than option 2?
Okay. Thank you for that question. So actually, in option number 2 and 3, both of those options the maximum would be the 800 square feet. So in option number 2, maybe I could pull it up on the screen. In option number 2, the maximum size for a garage is 200 feet. That 200 feet has to be incorporated into that 800 square foot maximum.
Okay, so I guess that, yeah, I didn't see that because it shows that 800 square feet maximum, and it's just my misinterpretation of this, because I thought, well, 800 for ADU and then 200 for garage. So, yeah.
Right.
But it's, as long as it's the same, then it will be all right.
Right.
So I think it's fair. Another question. Let's see here.
I mean, and just to follow up on that, maybe the illustration could say 200 square foot maximum for garage portion or something along those lines. Just
Yeah, so altogether.
and then
maximum
the
is
the
600.
dwelling area would then therefore be maximum of 600.
600. Right.
Right.
Okay.
Note of that.
I think that's good. That's fair. Second question is about, well, if they want to rent, not daily. Actually, we do have converted garage and daily, and all they have to do is just post for rent sign on the bulletin board in front of a supermarket, and that's all. They don't have to go to Airbnb, but they post it and rent it for $12 a day now. So how do you enforce that? I mean, it's a violation that we don't want them to have this short-term rental.
Right.
But how are you going to go in there and ask them and say, hey, or even if they charge weekly, instead of just daily, maybe weekly, $100 a week, how are you going to tell them, hey, this is illegal?
Well, I think that the purpose for this zone text amendment, the third portion of it, to require the covenant, is exactly for that reason. Something to provide code enforcement, neighborhood improvement services, provide them a document and a way of recording these properties that are being converted, garages, proposed additions that are ADUs, new structures that are ADUs, and ensuring that those are not short-term rentals. Neighborhood Improvement Services does have a process where they go out there and they check properties that are illegally converted, illegally added on, and they go through that process. If somebody wants to do that, then Neighborhood Improvement Services would be the one to take care of that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any others? Councilmember Harrington? Okay, Councilmember Costanzo.
The only thing I would suggest in attachment C, and it may be in other places, other attachments, the third page, item number 8, where it does say if the garage is attached to the ADU, then it shall count towards the maximum ADU size of 800 feet, making that clarification so it's clearly stated. And it may be other places, but if you could maybe add that so, again, everybody's clear on what that means.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a good comment. I have first a question regarding the number 200 square feet as the maximum for a garage or a parking space for an ADU, because I think standard parking stall size is like 6 feet by 12 feet, something like that, or 72 square feet. So why would we allow 200 square feet to park one vehicle?
And I don't have it in the PowerPoint, but section 153.049 of the R1 of the San Gabriel Municipal Code zoning code provides that a garage space that is required have dimensions of 10 by 20, so the 200 square feet. This is not
sorry to interrupt, but as a minimum, that's the minimum garage size?
Correct. Well, for garage space. So if it's a 2-car garage, a 400 square foot internal space.
Okay. So can you repeat that code section?
It's section 153.049.
As the minimum square footage for garages, right?
It's in internal dimensions of 10 by 20.
So 153.049 specifies that a garage must be at least 10 by 20.
The space, the garage, the parking space in a garage, 10 by 20.
And then, forgive me, I didn't check the full code, but does that apply, I mean, is that only in R1 neighborhoods?
That is in, sorry. That is in R1 neighborhoods. It's in the R1 code, R1 section of the code. Another reason for the 200 square foot requirement was because in section, give me, Section 153.031 of the San Gabriel Municipal Code says that any accessory structure shall be limited to 200 square feet.
Limited, but that's a ceiling, not a floor.
Correct.
Okay. Well, here we're saying, okay, right. I mean, I don't necessarily have a problem with having a 200 square foot garage for ADUs. But as you can see here, you know, most people who are gonna do this, it's in their interest to have a separate garage and an ADU, right? They can build 1,000 extra square feet versus only 800 in any of the other options.
Correct.
And then, you know, if you only need, say, the 70-some square feet to park your car, then what's the rest of that space really going to be for? Anyway, I mean, you know, I just wanted to, verify what is the policy reason for allowing a 200 square foot garage. I mean, I think you're saying that our code specifies that that's actually the minimum square footage for any enclosed space in the R1 neighborhood. What about R2 and R3?
Maybe, do you mind? So going back to, so in the R1 neighborhood, it is a requirement that for new garage space, required garage space, a minimum size for each parking space is 10 by 20.
I see.
This was language that we saw fit
Yeah, no. It's not that, no, you don't have to,
Right.
like, justify that. I mean, there's many portions of the code that we're continually dealing with that's, very outdated, or we inherited from very, very many years ago. To go back and clean up every other, section is a huge undertaking, and then, of course, there's interplay, throughout the code between sections. So if that's what the minimum is in the R1 neighborhood, then that's what it is. That's fine. I'm not proposing that we go and amend that section as well. So
Right.
I just want to understand why that is selected as the number, because it seems to be perhaps more space than is really necessary for a single vehicle. My other questions I would rather deal with, spend more time discussing, because the other zone text amendments here also deal with the R2 and R3 zones. I'm curious, why is it necessary to provide for ADUs in those zones, which already allow for more than one unit?
So that's correct. In the R2 and R3 zones, they do allow for multiple family units. However, there are some R2 and R3 zones that, based on the density requirement, are not permitted by code to provide a second unit. Their only option would be to provide an ADU instead.
Say that again, I'm sorry. So an R2 or R3 lot that already has multifamily units on it, or no?
No. Sorry, I should have clarified that before. If a parcel, whether it's R1, R2, R3, has more than one unit, by our ADU ordinance, they would not be allowed to apply for an ADU. If they have more than one unit on the property already, they would not be allowed to have an ADU. They're only allowed on properties that have one existing residence.
Okay, I'm sorry. Tracy, could you step in, please?
If you have an R2 or an R3 lot that's underdeveloped with just a single family resident, you're still subject to the single family standards, and that includes the ADU. We've got a pretty decent handful of situations where you've got R2 and R3 zoning, but it's just a single family home that's still sitting there. You're then subject to R1 standards, which includes the ADU.
Okay. Would this apply for lots that are developed appropriately? Like, so for R2, I believe you're allowed to have up to 4 units, is that correct?
R2, R3, if you've already got multifamily there, you're playing by multifamily rules. So the ADU is kind of a moot point.
Well, then, my concern would be here is that we're adding provisions or portion of the code here that seem to suggest you can have an ADU in addition to whatever you already have developed. You know what I'm saying? Because, so for instance, for R2, the last sentence of section 153.082, it was there before, right, which said second residential units, now being changed to ADUs, may be placed on a lot, provided all other requirements relating to development of such units in the R1 zone are met, except that there shall be no requirement for the owner to live in one of the units. And I think that a plain reading of that suggests that you could have that second residential unit or ADU in addition to whatever you had, and you don't have to live there. And then the same issue comes up again in the R3 if you just look below section 153.102, and each of these sections, right, that deal with the R2 and R3 zones. But it was my sort of understanding, or that if you have an R2 or an R3 lot, you don't need an ADU. You just build according to R2 or R3 standards wherever you might happen to be. That this ADU concept really only applies to the R1 neighborhoods to allow for a little bit increased density where you have, a single family home. Now, I wasn't aware there were some lots that are zoned R2 or R3 but only have a single family residence on them. So that, but then if that's the specific situation, because I can't imagine that's like the majority or really a lot of the cases that are out there.
Commonplace. Then it's actually more commonplace than I think.
If
is
that's
envisioned.
if that's the situation that we're, sort of legislating for, then I think we just need to be more specific on that. And I'm not aware of what in the code it would say that an R2 lot is zoned for R2 or R3. If it only has R1, an R1 residence on it, then it must abide still by R1 standards. Is that?
That's very commonplace in most communities. If you underdevelop a lot with a single-family home, then you're still subject to the R1 standards, because in theory, you could...
But, I'm sorry, but is
No.
it in the code?
Yes, it's in the
Okay,
code.
what section?
I don't know which section it is off the top of my head.
It is section 153.091, single-family structure in R2 zone, which states all single-family residential units constructed in the R2 zone shall comply with the development standards for single-family residential units in the R1 zone.
Great. Could you repeat the .0 again?
I'm sorry. Yes, 153.091.
91, okay. So I guess my suggestion then would be to, instead of just to be more specific there and then say that if, well, I don't know if it needs to be a separate section, because we're really only talking about the R2 and R3 lots that have an SFR on it, right? Like a single family residence.
Correct.
For these ADUs, because I think it would create other confusion too if you just, people start saying, well, shouldn't it be allowed? I can have an ADU plus the 10 apartments that I have on this property already, and I want to put an ADU on it of whatever 800 square feet or 1,000 if you include a garage or something like that.
Right.
I mean, I'm not saying that there are many lots that would actually have that kind of available square footage, but just as a matter of code. So I would suggest, I don't know, somehow clarifying that.
Okay. Okay.
Because I think if you deal with those, with a sort of just a slightly separate section, you can remove the references to ADUs completely from these sections that apply to R2 and R3.
Right.
Because I think the code with respect to R2 and R3 should really just deal with multi-family or multi-unit development, and then you're really saying that if a lot that's zoned R2 or R3 must comply with the R1 standards under 153.091, then the ADU rules in, as we're otherwise here amending, should apply.
Correct. Okay.
Not that the rules of ADU apply in R2 or R3 at all. You know what I'm saying?
Correct.
I think that would, to me,
Okay.
if I have a R2 or R3 lot that's already developed with more than one unit, and then I see that, I can also do an ADU, that kind of makes me think that, okay, I can, you know what I'm saying, I can actually build even more.
Right.
Ask a clarifying question.
Absolutely.
So just to clarify, if it's the intent of what we're discussing, if somebody had an a single-family home that happened to be in an R2 or an R3 zone, if they built an ADU, the council would want one of those two units to be occupied by the owner. Otherwise, you would want them to build according to the R2 or the R3 standards and build a traditional second or third unit. That's what I'm hearing. I just want to make sure that's...
I guess that would be the result according to what this staff is saying, how the rule would apply.
Correct.
I'm curious too, though, because then, an owner who does that, aren't they almost downzoning themselves? Because they also would have to, record a restrictive covenant on their property that, the ADU must be such and such, what are the 3 requirements? That it must be owner occupied and so forth and so on.
Right. So the only logical way that would be an option is if the R2 or the R3 lot did not allow for another unit based on the R2 standards. A reason for that is we have a lot of R2 lots that are actually not sized like an R2 property, more like an R1. They need, for each unit, they need 3,960 square feet. There are lots that are just under that requirement for an R2 that would allow for 2 units. So if that property owner wanted to provide a second unit option, their only option would be the ADU. Thus, they would be subject to the R1 standards, ADU standards.
Interesting. I mean, because that's another case, I mean, maybe these are the corner cases, but where if a lot is not of an adequate size to support R2 development anyway, then why should it be, zoned R2? But, okay, that's another conversation that we don't have to deal with right now. Because I think the other option would be just that we don't allow ADUs in R2 and R3. If you're going to build another unit, you just develop according to R2 or R3 standards.
Yeah, under state law, it's all residentially zoned properties.
You must allow for it.
For an ADU.
I see. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Then I guess that's correct. I mean, as a property owner, it would never make sense if you're an R2
Right.
lot owner to just do an ADU. Like I said, you're kind of restricting yourself, but yes, Councilman Hernan.
Just for clarifications, I realize we have to allow them, but do they have to follow our code or not? Because our code wouldn't allow that second unit in R2 because of the size requirement. So they've changed our size requirement in effect.
They've changed, well,
The lot size requirement, because to do the second unit in an R2 that's otherwise not able to build it, they've reduced the size requirement in essence.
And you're correct. In essence, they've done that for all of our residential zones, because in an R1, you wouldn't allow a second unit anyway.
Well, we
that
did. We allowed senior housing. We actually did allow it, unlike other cities.
Correct.
Prior to this,
So,
yeah.
prior, correct. But
So-
you're right, that's what the state is requiring cities to do, is to require those second units.
Yes.
So I attend this seminar by San Gabriel, Rosemead, and Monterey Park, and all 3 city development directors were there. And interesting enough is the Rosemead, city of Rosemead, and on R1 zone, if it's over, I don't know, Armani may remember that, if it's over 6,500, they are allowed to build 2 houses. I was like, wow, that's very unusual. So on R1 zone, I don't know how they do it, but in city of Rosemead, they're allowed to do that.
Okay. So, yeah, I would feel more comfortable if we brought back, the actual text with the clarification how these rules would apply in the R2 and R3 zones, because I don't know if we can just do it here from the dais. And I want to make sure we're not creating another set of confusion and trying to eliminate one set of confusion. So I don't know. I would suggest that we could bring back the amendment to the zone text amendment at a future meeting. Okay.
Well, I still have a couple questions just from what I've seen.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
So when I'm going through here, it does discuss, it looks like it's discussing lot coverage Is there any floor area ratio implications between the differences between having an attached garage or not attached garage? Because I know if you have a single family home, there would be a difference.
Correct. So the ADU itself would count towards the floor area ratio. We just adopted language regarding our floor area ratio. We added a definition to the code that said permanently covered porches and patios would also count towards that floor area ratio calculation. Garages, those being accessory structures, would not count. They would, in all three of these instances, lot coverage would be required or would be calculated.
You're saying FAR?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how a patio or a patio cover counts towards FER, but a garage doesn't.
Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it just seems inconsistent to me. They either both should or neither. Because otherwise, I'll just create a carport and I'm fine. There's no FAR issue.
No. Permanently covered areas do count towards your FAR.
On the garage?
Mm-hmm.
I thought you said the opposite of that.
Correct. Permanently covered patios, porches would count towards FAR.
What about the garage?
The garage would not count towards FAR.
That's what I thought I heard.
Oh,
The garages don't, which seems inconsistent to me.
that's true.
If I put walls on my patio, all of a sudden I lose the space. I lose the FAR.
Or you're calling it a carport or a garage, and
Yeah.
now all of a sudden doesn't
Seems
count.
Inconsistent.
I agree with that too.
But
I mean-
I think that's up to the county assessor, because they look at the garage is not a livable area.
No, but we
and that's
define the
why
FAR.
not include in FAR. But if it's a patio or porch, it's part of the home, so that's why they include that.
So, Anthony's going to correct me if I butcher this, but let me give it a shot. In our code right now, when you build a single family home, you have to provide 2, sometimes maybe 3 spaces. 10 by 20 for each space. We do not count the garage toward the maximum FAR. Okay. If you build some extra space, like a lot of people do, storage, throw bicycles, stuff like that, we do count that extra space toward the maximum FAR requirement. But the spaces for the cars, a little bit of maneuverability in and out, we don't count that. In each of these situations up here, we would count the garage or the covered porch patio. State law says there's a bunch of different ways that you can provide parking for ADUs. You can have an uncovered space, you can use a lift, you can do it tandem, you can show where they can be parked in the driveway. But we have some people that when they apply for an ADU, they want to provide a covered space. Because it's not mandated to be covered, we count the garage, in this instance, toward FAR. If you want to do a covered porch or patio, we're going to count that toward FAR too, because a lot of the time what happens is about 15 minutes after they get a certificate of occupancy for that ADU and the porch patio, that porch patio suddenly gets enclosed and there's another new bedroom in the ADU, beyond the 2 bedrooms that's allowed. So we're counting what we can and should toward the maximum FAR to try and prevent overbuilding on the lot. Where the state has come in and prevented us from requiring stuff, parking that we might otherwise want to require versus on-street parking or driveway parking, size limitations. We've tried to kind of push back and tailor our standards to set caps where we can, and in instances where we can't, try and offset that a little bit. So it's definitely a balancing act, but if the council feels that we need to go back and look at whether or not covered garages should count no matter what, that's fine, we can do that, but we need to do it as part of the separate zone text amendment. And look at the ramifications that would have, especially on primary dwelling unit home size in single family neighborhoods. Because 400 square feet, I think we see a lot of homes that are coming in right now that are building a primary residence that are getting really close to that FAR max as is. And if we started counting the garage, I think in every instance I've seen over the past 3 months, they would definitely be over. So if we want to look at it, that's great. I think we should just do it as a separate issue.
Scribblers for permanently covered patio approach. Yeah, I think that, our intention is not to open the Pandora's box of going back through all R1 standards to count garages towards the FAR limitation. Maybe, though, just for ADUs, that it must be counted towards the FAR, normal FAR, right, which is 0.35. And if that's not clearly spelled out here in the zone text amendment, then maybe it should be. Because I'm looking at one here, 153.047E, maximum 800 square foot gross floor area, or 50% of the primary unit, whichever is less. And then it talks about square footage for permanently covered patio or porch, or garage, maybe just add those words, shall count towards the maximum ADU size. Or some notation, maybe a separate sentence or subsection that relates to how all of this, plays into FAR.
Yeah, it's rather silent right now. It doesn't.
Yeah, it doesn't address FAR.
I guess then the section, we've got a different section next page about newly constructed garages serving ADU shall be limited to a maximum of 200 square feet and must meet the building separation requirement of 6 feet. And then again, if the garage is attached to the ADU, then it shall count towards the maximum ADU size. So I guess we felt like the clarification, the language that we needed was there. Also the flexibility to kind of tackle these as they come up on a case-by-case basis.
But also size isn't FAR necessarily.
Yeah.
That's correct.
So that's what I think Councilmember Harrington is requesting, and I would agree with that.
Well, the reason I bring that up is because I've seen some very creative architects coming with these designs now, where the garages are coming in the front with the massing with the second story over the garage part of the house. And so all of a sudden you've lots that may not have made the lot coverage, they stack them up. And if the garage is not counting towards the FAR, you've really masked a lot by combining the garage and putting the house over it. There's some good examples if you drive through some of the newer construction of very creative reading of our code. Good job. I mean, it's code compliant, but we kind of created these little loopholes.
Yeah.
And second story ADUs aren't allowed, so the situation of an ADU over a garage.
No, I'm not talking ADU. I'm talking just a straight up no ADU, nothing. Just the garage will be used as they attach it, but then they build on the second story right over it, so that they're using their lot coverage wisely. Let's put it that way.
Okay, so that's at least another area. I mean, is the rest of the council in agreement that the garage should count towards the FAR in addition to these covered?
I don't agree because, most of the homes, back to, I was just talking about general homes being assessed by the living area only, excludes the garage. So if you want to distinguish the ADU garage and regular homes garage, let's create kind of confusion, because most people don't want to pay additional property tax, right? So you want to include.
We're not changing the county
this will not change assessments. If anything, what it will do is discourage people from building a separate garage for an ADU. If the rule only applies for ADU garages, it means then there's no incentive to build a separate garage.
Which will be turned into a unit.
Well, that's why I commented on the fact that allowing 200 square foot just to park a car is like a lot of space. To me, that I could put my car there and a game room.
The average space for the requirement for an uncovered space is 9 by 18, which gets you up to about 165 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the idea is if you're going to do a covered garage for a parking space, that's where you see the bump up to 200.
Right.
Pretty comparable to what you'd find in neighboring communities for garage requirements. Some cities through the years for uncovered parking stalls have kind of ebbed and flowed with the need for compact parking, but I'd say 9 by 18 and 10 by 20 for covered is pretty much the universal standard at this point.
Okay. So,
well, back to the county assessor again. Do they assess the ADU units, the square footage plus the garage. I mean, if we're going to include the garage square footage, for county assessor, I guess most of the people will say, hey, I don't want garage, I just want an ADU unit by itself.
I don't know
And
how
maybe the
county-
mayor is correct, we are kind of discourage them to build garage. But in our city, I guarantee you, 80% of the people, they need spaces, because average homes in San Gabriel is like 1,200 square feet. So all the garages are used for storage. And same thing, if they want to build a garage for ADU, they probably use for another storage space. So can you include it as a, FAR? That's another consideration.
Yes, we can. And I think that's what we're planning on doing. We have a lot of situations where a garage isn't included as part of the proposal. They just plan to accommodate the additional parking demand, usually within the driveway. 8 times out of 10, that's what we see. On some of the larger lots, sometimes they want to throw a garage on there too. So it's just being able to respond to those situations that do pop up.
Yeah, because as I see it, we have two options. There's 3 options. Either we have inconsistency still, where, like you say, garages would not count towards FER, but then if it's attached or it's a covered porch or patio, it does count towards FER. I agree with Councilmember Harrington. That doesn't make sense. The other option is to open a Pandora's box and go back through the whole code and talk about how we actually count permanently covered porches and patios, which is something that we have discussed in the past on other ordinances. Again, I'm not suggesting we do that at this point in time because that would be super complicated and require a lot more work. And then the third is just to do as we're suggesting now, is just for ADU garages, that the ADU garage will be square footage of any ADU garage would count towards the FAR limitations. And it doesn't, but I think that just basically means that, yeah, it would tend to discourage people from building a separate garage, which is, like Tracy's saying, which is fine. I agree, because then you're talking about, like in this option 1 here, it's a very crowded lot for an R1, in an R1 neighborhood, so. All right, is that clear enough for direction?
Yes, thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Okay. All right, motion to what? Yes, sir?
If it would please the council, can we have the public hearing reopened and continued to September the 17th? And then we won't have to renotice it?
Yes. September 17th, so okay, 2 weeks from now. Is that enough time to bring back? Okay. So what would be the motion then, to continue this item till September 17th? All right.
Motion.
Motion from Councilmember Leal, second from Councilmember Costanzo. I guess we should go to the board on it. All right, let's vote.
Motion passes by a vote of 4-0.
Okay, thank you to staff and thanks to council.
Thank you.
Next item, please.
The next item would be 6A, new business. I understand the item has been pulled to be rescheduled. Brings us to public comment. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. If you wish to address the City Council, we request that you please complete a speaker's request card and hand it to the clerk. When speaking, please state your name for the record.
Okay, I do not have any additional speaker's request cards. Would anybody in the audience like to address the City Council? Okay. Seeing none, I will close public comment once again. Next item, please.
City Manager's report.
I have nothing tonight, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Council comments. Let's start with Councilmember Costanzo.
I have nothing either. Thank you.
Councilmember Leal.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. So I attend this is American Building Industry Association. It's called Home Building 101. It talks about how to acquire the land and also how to acquire the entitlement. And looks like the business is still busy. However, they're facing two challenges right now. Number one is the cost of construction have gone up quite a bit. And number two is the skilled laborers. A lot of old laborers retired, and the new ones, they don't know what to do, so they have to hire construction management. So it's going to cost them more. But anyway, this is very interesting. Also, I have an invitation. I want to invite everybody to, including the residents and business. It's regarding the CPUC voting meeting. That's California Public Utility Commission. They will come to Cal State LA on September 12th, and this is the first time. All the past meetings were held in San Francisco, so this is the first time they reach out to Southern California. Of course, a lot of issues. Remember, we passed the balanced energy policy. We want to keep the gas and electricity and affordable utilities altogether. So there's several issues in their agenda. So they want to invite all the public to speak. So they want to hear what our concerns are. So I encourage everybody to attend. Again, it's Thursday, September 12th, 10 o'clock at the Cal State LA Golden Eagle Room. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Leal. Councilmember Harrington.
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. I just wanted to report on Los Pobladores, which is 2 weekends ago. It was a really great event, and it was about a little over 200 people who participated in the Walk to LA. It's one of my favorite events every year. I think all of us here were there that morning, bright and early, 6 a.m. to kick it off, and then with the ceremonial walk in downtown. To El Pueblo, or to the sort of rotunda there. It was really also, again, a very nice event, especially with members of the Gabrielino Tongva tribe who were there, and who actually, some of whom participated in the walk. But Chief Red Blood was there at the El Pueblo, and was able to speak on camera to a number of news outlets. So that was really nice. So that, in the future, it's actually LA's birthday celebration, but we're kind of was wanting for some officials from the city of LA, unfortunately, this year. But it was really good again, and sort of tying into that, the fiesta was this past weekend, Labor Day weekend, and I apologize if members of the council were there but didn't get to be part of the procession. For whatever reason, it was, done earlier than what they had stated, and then, it was over in like 10 minutes. But again, that was nice, and when I had a chance to come back to the Mission District later on that evening, it looked like there were a lot of people just out and about and around our Mission District, which is great. The fiesta does draw people from all over every year, so that's really good for our Mission District. Just wanted to comment too and congratulate. So Rebecca and her staff, they did a great job, obviously, setting up for the Los Pobladores event, but also the Summer Night Series, which ended also 2 or 3 weeks ago with, I think, Luis Cruz Beltran. I think I saw Councilmember Leal attending a little bit later, but there was like 600 people here for that, and so it's really great to see those events going strong and really bringing the community together. On October 4th, will be Dumplings and Beer, right here again in our Mission District. So anybody out there on the internet or here in the audience who's interested, you can go to our economic development website. It's sangabrieled.com to purchase tickets. There's a link there to the Eventbrite, or look for the event on Facebook that you can, obviously say that you're going or that you're interested, but there's also a link to the Eventbrite ticket sales site from the Facebook page as well. And also Mission Playhouse is selling tickets to that every Tuesday evening when the box office is regularly open. So hopefully those who are interested will have a chance to come join us for dumplings and beer, and that rounds out a lot of the sort of the summer set of events. After that, we'll be moving into fall with the Fall Fun Festival and others. But I think we're really proud of all of our community events, and they seem to be really drawing a lot of people, and a lot of people having a good time. So congrats to all the staff on doing a great job with that. That's my comments and reports. I guess we don't have any closed session, and we will adjourn. The next regular City Council meeting will be held on Tuesday, September 17th, 2019, at 6:30 p.m. here in the Council Chambers at 425 South Mission Drive here in San Gabriel. And information regarding matters to be considered will be available on the Friday before the council meeting on the website at sangabrielcity.com. Thank you.